charge you for this. That's what I got the headphones for. I don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, so we need to go ahead and start telling the story on how you came into prisons.
Oh Allah, Bismillah.
What year you start coming in the prison system?
Bismillah, 1974.
And so what you and so what prison was it?
The first prison I went to, the first prison that I started corresponding with my own cousin, Leo Robinson, Jack, when he was in Susanville. And the first prison I went to was visit him in Chino when he came down from Chino. Yeah, when he came down from Chino, like 74. You know that photograph that we in? That family photograph?
Oh yeah.
That was Chino.
Is that right?
That was Chino, 1974.
Wow, that right? Yeah, cause that was so that was a visit then.
Yeah.
Yeah, is that right?
Yeah, he came down from Susanville to San Quentin.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm. And then he was on the process of being released. That was one of the key things when a person was getting released at that time. They would come down to San Quentin. They would come to Chino. And then as a result of them coming to Chino, then by the grace and mercy of Allah, they would at least be a year. It had a year or less, and then we get released.
Right. So when you start going to TS though?
I started going to YTS in August 1975.
75. So dang, so you about what, 23 or something like that? Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah. And some of the brothers was older than I.
Damn, is that right?
Yeah.
So okay, so you started going and speaking to the guys up in YTS Islamic Services or what?
Right. Yeah, because there was well, really, as a result of being in the Black Panther Party and being living around the Nation of Islam, and with Malcolm X being and Elijah Muhammad being former people who were incarcerated, they removed the negative stigma that was associated with being incarcerated, because they were a transformation of rehabilitation on the basis of self-determination. So then people looked upon that in a positive manner, that they had corrected themselves and evolved from reactionary behavior and fratricidal strife. So, and then with the Black Panther Party, with Eldridge Cleaver coming out with the book Soul on Ice. When he came out with Soul on Ice, and he had done numerous years in prison, then he became the Minister of Information of the Black Panther Party. And so again, that even elevated the consciousness more of the people to accept people as a result of them formerly being incarcerated. So when I became a Muslim, and after reading the autobiography of Malcolm X, there was a newspaper used to come out called Soul Magazine. It was by an African American husband and wife, Ken Jones and Mrs. Jones, and it was called Soul. And he was also an anchor for the local news in Los Angeles. I believe it was Channel 11. And but their Soul Magazine, it was very informative, like Jet Magazine, dealing with entertainment. What you see now today with TV1 and BET and Centric, except it was in newspaper form in that format. And so they also had pen pals. So brothers would be writing from prison. So when as a result of me writing my own cousin Jack, then I saw a way of how to get into prisons and jails, and it was through pen pals. So I started writing brothers from that Soul Magazine that were incarcerated.
Is that right?
So in YTS, in YTS, there was a brother we grew up with. He got out of YTS, and Abdullah, may Allah bless him. He was in YTS, but I didn't know, the address or anything. I really didn't know what YTS was. I hadn't heard of it. Ironic as it may seem and sound, but I didn't know what YTS was. And then one of the brothers we grew up with, he got out of YTS, and then he told me, he said, "Why don't you go up there and put the brothers down?" I said, "Where?" He said, "YTS." I said, "Where is it?" He said, "Ontario, California." I said, "Ontario?" He said, "Around the corner from Chino." I said, is that right? He said, yeah. I said, they're not going to let me in there. And he said, yes, they will. And so I wrote the superintendent in 1975, and he wrote me back and told me, invited me to come in.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't even have a car. So it was a Muslim brother, Abdullah.
Mm-hmm.
He took me up there. And so the superintendent, he had a chaplain, Jackson, in the office with him.
Mm-hmm.
So he said, well, what do you want to do? I said, I just want to talk about Islam and tell how Islam has changed my life, and that's it. He said, that's all you want to do? I said, yeah. So the chaplain, he said, are you in the Nation of Islam? I said, no. He said, well, it's going to be a conflict. He said, because you're an Orthodox Muslim. Mm-hmm. And we have members here with the Nation of Islam. So I told him, I said, no, it won't be a conflict. And so the superintendent said, when do you want to start coming in? And that's how I started.
Is that right? Wow. So would you start with going like weekly or?
Well, I was going week on Sundays, but nobody would overall come because they didn't know who we were. And,
yeah. So like initially it wasn't people participating.
No.
Is that right?
It was just me coming.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so and the administration telling what they regarded as wards because of the AIDS, because of the AIDS, they didn't say convicts like adult prisons or
right.
And they say the wards. They would say they were announcing over the speaker, but I didn't believe it overall because nobody would come. So I decided. I said, well, since I was incarcerated as well, overall, you interrupted a family visit, so people would come, but they still want to see their family. So by the grace of mercy of Allah, what I did was I would go to the church. I would get there early, so I could meet the brothers that was in church, and so then that's how I started talking with them. And one of the first brothers, like many brothers that I started talking with, and then I asked the chaplain. I said, well, is there any other time that I can come? He said, it's Sunday because I don't want to interrupt the family visit. He said, yes. He said, come Monday night. I said, okay. And that's when I started coming Monday night, and that's when all of them started coming from all the units. That's when because they said the Muslims are here. And so, but nobody really knew who the Muslims were because they thought it was the Nation of Islam. Mm-hmm. And then by the grace and mercy of Allah, then by word of mouth, it took off.
Cause that YTS, that was kind of like some of the main guys from the gangs and all that was up in there, right? I mean, that was kind of like for youth, wasn't that like a maximum type situation?
It was the end of the line in regards to the youth, for like you had YTS and Preston, and primarily Crips were sent to YTS, and Bloods were going to Preston if they didn't go to Tracy. But for Southern California, Central California was YTS, and Central California, Ione, California was Preston, then Northern California, Tracy.
So how did you reach them? Because I know there's a lot of guys that embraced Islam because of y'all's efforts. So like, what was your approach or method to reaching them guys coming out the gangs and stuff?
Telling them my own life story. Because my life was the same as theirs. And by the grace and mercy of Allah, because I left school in rebellion at 13 years of age, and then was convicted with rebellious youth at 16, and so by the grace and mercy of Allah, and then I just tell them, and then telling them my own life story, and then where I lived and how I grew up and where I grew up, so and everybody overall could relate to it.
And so. Were they receptive?
Yeah, overall, collectively, I would say, it was never, I never really encountered any negativity because one of the key things was, as I say, when people told your story, and then by the grace and mercy of Allah, they had the essence of a life, and that was time, in regards to being able to see what it was that they were able to transform their lives. And giving them relevant material to read. And that's one of the key things. If you give a person, especially if they're incarcerated, if you give them relevant material to read, it'll change their destiny overnight in regards to themselves. And that's been personified and continues to be a personification of rehabilitation of a person being able, as Malcolm X said, to attack their ignorance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, okay, I mean, look, inshallah, we're gonna come back and finish up on the history of how you started you going into the prison system and with Islam and the Dawah in the prison system, inshallah. So we to be continued, inshallah. Jazakallahu khairan. So.